Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2024 Kawasaki ZX-4RR, and I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country, and it was less than a year ago that I introduced this model to you as the 2023 model. So we have the 2024 now. 2023 sold out in a huge hurry, and this is just as limited edition, just as limited availability as before, maybe even less so than before. So if you're interested in this bike, give Jim Gilbert's a call. There's a link in the description. They will connect you up with this exact bike. As far as I know, this is the only one they have right now. Well, it is the only one they have right now. It may be the only one they're getting for a long time. These guys have a ability to pull out bikes sometimes when we think there's none left, but there are very, very, very few of these. So make sure you give Jim Gilbert's, connect up with them through the link in the description. But in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what's new for 2024, because there is one change available to you. And we're going to start going through this bike in detail, because when we first introduced it to you, there was a lot of confusion about what it was, and I've seen a lot of reviews since and read a lot of reviews since where a lot of people who are reviewing this bike, it's just they're not the target market for this bike, and they really don't understand what this is. There's no question this is a narrow market bike. It's not built for everybody, but for certain people, it is absolutely the best bike in the market for a certain class if you're the kind of rider that fits this. So we're going to talk about what kind of rider would really appreciate this. We're going to talk about why I personally think it's fantastic, and we're going to talk about, some of the little flaws in it, but also how to work around that. So let's get going with this review. So I want to be clear about one thing. I'm going to do an in-depth review of this bike, but there may be pieces that I'm missing or things that you want to know that I don't mention in this video, and maybe I know, maybe I don't know, but the best thing about Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals is they give me complete access to their entire Kawasaki line of vehicles, so I can come back to this bike again and again and again. If you want to see my full review of the 2023, you can see that. That's on my channel as well. But again, if you have questions, we're going to come back. Now, one of the things we're going to do is I stole this bike basically out of the shop. It hasn't even got a battery in it yet. Hasn't been driven even around the parking lot yet, just to go through the proper pre-delivery inspection. So this one in particular, we're going to go through the entire bike, but I'm going to do a separate video to dig into the dash details at a future video, because there's a few differences in there and this would just drag out to be too long. So let's get going with this review, but remember, subscribe if you're interested in these bikes. All the 2024s I will be covering, and again, if you have questions, just let me know and I'll keep coming back to you. We'll create a video database of all the information you want. So one of the most confusing things about this bike for a lot of people is that it is a small engine bike, 399cc, but it is a 4-cylinder bike. So a lot of people equate the engine size with entry level, and then they see the price of this and they're like, oh, the Ninja 400 is a better buy. And for most people, the Ninja 400 will be a better buy. It's a 2-cylinder bike, makes a little bit less horsepower, but it is definitely more affordable than this. What you have here is truly a mini ZX-10, and I think that kind of matters, because if you think about a ZX-10, it's kind of like this is a ZX-10 for the road. If you think about those larger super bikes from Kawasaki, they have so much power that they really are track bikes first, and something like the ZX-10 gives you cruise control, because that uncomfortable riding position that's great on the track can be tough when you're driving longer trips, so they give you the ability to kind of relax your hands. This one doesn't have the cruise control, but it also has a more comfortable riding position. The big thing with this is a super bike that you can actually rev right out on the streets and have fun. Now, you're still going to go well beyond legal speed limits, but you might be in 3rd or 4th or 5th gear doing that instead of in 1st or 2nd gear. And that really brings the enjoyment of driving. They always say, like with cars, it's fun to drive a slow car fast rather than a fast car slow. By no means is this a slow bike, but it is more fun to drive on the streets than some of those bigger super bikes for some people. Now, the reason you would buy this has nothing to do with just the engine. I mean, the engine's great. We'll talk about that in a second, but you're also getting high-end components in the suspension. So the suspension is a big deal. We're going to look at what you've got there, and then you've got the technology that just makes it kind of awesome. So let's talk about the engine. Let's talk about a few different things. We'll sit in closer. Actually, the first thing we'll do is just jump on the bike. So if you see what this bike is sized like, you've got that super sport look. So again, a Ninja 400 is going to give you a little bit more of an upright position if you're thinking 400 to 400. Really what this compares to is, do you want to go with a ZX6, or do you want to save a little bit of money but also have a bike that you can ring out a little bit more on the street? And that's where this kind of appeals to me. Now, they have made this the most approachable riding position. The ZX6 and ZX10 leans you over more, puts more weight on the wrists. I actually fell on the ice yesterday and hurt my wrist, and this still doesn't hurt to sit on. So you can see you have a nice tucked in compact riding position here. where your feet are high off the ground, and that allows for those true lean angles that you're going to get over the true super sport bikes. The other thing you feel is very, very connected to this bike. It's compact in its feel. You've got a relatively comfortable position here that you could ride all day, but you also have the ability to tuck right down onto that flat tank top and tuck in right around the windshield and have that full tuck race position. So if you're going to the racetrack, this bike's great. But the thing is, I think most people buying this are probably going to stick to the roads, and that's where this is kind of amazing. So what do you get? When you look in here, you're going to see a ram air system. We're going to show you that. You're going to see a nice digital dash. You're going to see the adjustable suspension, and you get the superbike riding experience. So let's pull you in closer and show you some of the pieces right here. So taking a look at the cockpit of this bike, you really have that modern superbike feel, and everything on this bike is essentially customizable just for you. So you've got the suspension, the gold fork tubes up top here, preload adjustment. There's basically a fully adjustable front suspension. We're also going to show you the fully adjustable rear suspension. You've got the ram air system here. Now on other superbikes in the Kawasaki lineup, that air directs through the frame. This one directs through the bodywork, but it works its way in, and you have all of the same technology that you would have in the larger bikes. You've also got the digital display. Like I said, we'll show you that in a future video to kind of dig through there. But there's other little features here that allow you to customize as well. So let's take a look at some of the controls just to show you how you can customize this and make it fit for you. So taking a look at the left side controls, this is sort of where you control almost everything here. So typical Kawasaki controls, you've got the little trigger right here to flash your high beams. There's your high beams and low beams right there. Signals, horn, four-way flashers, which is nice. And then the control here, which includes a lap timer as well. So you can hit your laps as you're going around if you're at the racetrack. Couple of the little nice things though, is you do have an adjustable clutch lever here. So it's 5 different adjustments, which allows you to move the clutch lever in or out as you would want it. It's currently in the 5th position there, so you can kind of see where it is. It's lined up with my first knuckle there. If we move it over to the first position, it's actually lined up with my second knuckle. So the adjustment is roughly there to there, moving out. Now, a lot of people think this is just purely for reach. What I like to tell people is it also changes where that engagement point of your clutch feels. So that gives you that engagement point exactly where you want it. Now, the clutch is a slipper and assist clutch, which means it's very lightweight, easy to use, but you also don't have to use it all the time because you have an up-down quick shifter on this. So again, on this RR model, that up-down quick shifter gives you those lightning quick shifts, clutchless shifts where it can just kill the timing for just 1 second, allow you to make those lightning quick shifts. So you are dealing with a true super sport experience when you're riding. So customized to fit here, customized in your dash here, all the controls you need, very comfortable as well for a super bike. So a lot of options. We'll just show you the other controls, the select button on the other side, the start button, and then we'll move you across and start taking a look at some of the mechanicals of this bike. So taking a look over on the throttle side here, again, nice, easy to modulate throttle. You've got a couple other things. You have a select button here, which is not something you see on most Kawasaki's. That is also going to give you that ability to select things from your screen. So the only thing your left side is doing is controlling the throttle and the odd time choosing that select button. You've got your start and kill switch built in here, and your brake lever over here also has the same adjustment to adjust exactly how you want it to feel. So it's also got 5 reach adjustments there. And again, that engagement is going to be exactly where you want it, you know, both to fit your hands if you're bigger or smaller hands, but also to move that engagement point exactly where you want it on the front brake. So good customizability from the suspension to the dash, which we'll show you in a separate video, to the levers here as well. Now let's take a look at some of the mechanicals, because they're also not what you would expect from a 400cc motorcycle. So I often start my videos out here at the front wheel because you can really see the manufacturer's intent when you start looking at the front wheel suspension and brake setup of a motorcycle. And when you look at the manufacturer's intent, you do see a few things that are just far from entry level. We already talked about the suspension being highly adjustable, but it's also an upside down suspension. So that of course gives you less unsprung weight for better suspension performance. It also gives you more stiffness for that high performance driving. So really that's what you would get on a super sport bike. You get it on this bike. The other thing you have is a radial mount brake. So much better, much stiffer, much higher end brake mount system here. Obviously the dual discs here, the ABS ring there. But again, all high end components here that can handle day at the track, that can handle, athletic riding around. And even though this is only, 399 cc, you can still maintain high speeds and have quality braking. So again, suspension and braking, you're really getting what you would get on a higher end super sport bike, but you're having it in a more approachable package that you could really enjoy more on the road. So taking a look at the rear wheel, this is a 160 series rear wheel. Now you expect a little bit wider on a larger Super Sport. So I've had some people kind of tell me, oh, I want a wider tire on there for handling or whatever. But the reality is what this does with a little bit narrower tire is it makes the bike a little bit more nimble. And again, you're buying this to have a blast while riding. So 160 is not a narrow tire. It's not like it's a 130 or anything like that, but it is narrow by modern Super Sport standards. But again, that gives you that ability to really roll over on that tire, to really go back and forth, have that real flickable design. Obviously, good disc brake back there with ABS. The other thing we should point out is the exhaust. This is an incredible screaming exhaust, but there's a catch with this. So let's talk about the sort of elephant in the room when it comes to the ZX-4RR. So in Canada, and from what I understand in the States as well, again, we're filming in Canada, which is why I'm referring to Canada, and that's why I call it Z, not Z, so we'll have to cover that in a separate video. But in Canada, this bike is technically somewhat illegal if it came from the factory the way it's supposed to come for you and I, the consumer. So what I'm getting at is this thing revs to like 16,000 RPM. You have 4 cylinders that are very small, that move very short distance, which makes it a really fast and high revving bike, and it also has a lot of noise that can come out of that, which we as riders love, but noise regulations don't. So from the factory, this bike is limited in power to 11,500 RPM. It'll still rev past that, it'll still make all the noise, and from a riding experience, from a sound and fun experience, you still have that ability to rev that thing right up. But it is limited for noise regulations. Now, a lot of people on a superbike will swap out the exhaust, maybe give it a bit of a tune. That is something that people do to this bike to allow it to have that. And that basically moves the noise regulation issues from Kawasaki to you as a rider. That's an option for you. I'm not telling you you should or should not do certain things. That's the option for you. That being said, even if this just revs to 11,500 RPM, this is still all about the experience of everything. And again, you can rev this thing right out on the road, have all kinds of fun, and stay closer to legal limits. So that's the one issue with the engine in here in Canada. For the riders that are buying this, I don't think that's a huge thing. If this was a mainstream bike, that would be a huge issue. But again, the riders who are buying this, they understand what they're getting. They understand what they may want to do or may not want to do with this bike. And like I said, given so few numbers, the people that want this bike, they understand what they're going to do. While we're taking a look at this view here, I'm going to flash up on screen. There is a new color scheme for 2024. It is, as shown on the screen, it is the 40th anniversary edition color scheme, which really brings me back to the colors that I remember when I saw the Kawasaki Super Sport bikes when I was growing up. So really cool kind of look there. I think it's sort of from the 90s or so. If that's what you want, you can get that. For me, I still like the more modern colors that this one comes in. You can still get this as well. So there's your color scheme. Now let's talk about a tiny bit of practicality in this bike as well, which is something that I didn't expect when I first saw it, but I'll show it to you right now. So if you go through the Kawasaki accessories, you can see that if you wanted to sort of replace this seat with a cowl, you could do that. But it's not from the factory limited to a single rider or that kind of thing. You've got rear foot pegs just off screen there. Actually, we'll just show you them right now because we're going to zoom into a piece of that. So there's your rear foot pegs kind of on the bottom of the screen there. You've also got this little hook here. So that's not just to keep the the passenger's foot out of the area. It also has a hook here, and there's another hook just that we moved off screen up at the top over here. Let me just point that out to you over here. So this gives you the ability to mount a tail bag. A lot of people mount a sport or mount a tank bag to a sport bike, but that does limit your ability to sort of crouch down into a tuck position, and a tail bag makes more sense, if you ask me, for a sport bike. So you still have the ability to fit a tail bag here, and what that does is make this a really practical bike that you can use as sort of an everyday bike if you're heading to work or school or something like that, or just want to do some run around in it. You can take your tail bag, you can do longer rides with it, take everything you need. So you do have options to mount some luggage, which is not typical for a super sport bike, but you have that here. One other nod to practicality, at the very top of your screen right here, you're going to see a little helmet lock there that is on this ZX-4RR, but we're not really looking at that right now. We are looking down here at this. What you have here is basically a copy of the ZX-10 suspension, and when I say copy, I mean it truly is fully adjustable as well. Try to get the focus right there, but you have a proper fully adjustable backlink shock here. So again, both geometry-wise, adjustment-wise, you have something that can truly be adjusted. So let's talk about why adjustable suspension matters. This is unheard of on a 400cc motorcycle, but let's talk about how that makes a difference to you, and this is really what it comes down to. If you want this bike, the difference in money you're paying is probably more for the suspension than anything else. So why does adjustable suspension matter? So first of all, adjustable suspension of any kind is very, very limited on any kind of smaller CC bike. So what you're getting here when I talk about a ZX-10 for the road is you're really ending up with something that gives you that superbike experience. Now, on the track, adjusting your suspension, tweaking your suspension here and there can allow you to have slightly better ride or slightly better lap times over and over again. You can come back off, tweak it up, and adjust it. But reality is, a lot of sport bikes have adjustable suspension, and they do that for a reason. Even my bike, I bought the Z900RS, which is the retro sport version of the Z900, but I bought the SE model in part because it has adjustable suspension. And what that allows you to do is to soften the ride for comfort, but also tweak it up for performance. And you can tweak it up for performance on the types of roads that you ride on and for the type of riding you do. It's kind of part of the superbike experience. So you don't have to jump up to a bike that may be out of your insurance class or out of your comfort zone on the road. You can have a bike like this that you can rev fully out and still have that superbike experience of dialing in that suspension exactly the way you want it for the type of ride you're gonna do that day, for the type of roads you're gonna do that day, or you can soften things up and loosen things up a little bit to have a little bit more comfort on the days where you're just cruising around and doing that kind of thing. It really is part of the true sport bike experience, and you have that full sport bike experience on this. So fully adjustable rear, fully adjustable front. It's not just about the riding experience, it's about the overall ownership experience of customizing that bike to be exactly what you want on that day that you're riding. So before we wrap up by telling you exactly who this bike is for and who it's not for, let's just run through some of the technologies that Kawasaki points out on their website so we can talk about how they relate to this bike and they might be different from other bikes. So the first thing to talk about is assist and slipper clutch, which we talked about. So what that does is it gives you a lighter clutch pull, but that's really a secondary function. Assist and slipper clutches were brought in for racetrack use so that you could just dump the clutch with a huge rev differential between your rear wheel and your engine, and it allows that clutch to kind of slip instead of the wheel to slip to allow you to keep control. Now on an entry-level bike, we talk about that light clutch pull. We talk about if you mess up your downshift, it allows you to keep some control, and that still is valid for this bike. But really what it does is it also allows you to have some extra performance. And then you go through a couple things that are just kind of different, that don't really relate to the race side of things. It has an economical riding indicator. Again, this is a 4-cylinder screaming bike, so if you want to get a little bit better fuel efficiency, it's going to let you know that it has, you're in the range of the revs where you get good fuel economy. Electronic throttle valves, we can talk about that. The quick shifter is the real piece on this. Now there is a ZX-4RR model, not an RR in Canada. The quick shifter is optional. If you're going to add that quick shifter, it still technically keeps you under the price of this bike, but at that point, adding the quick shifter to that bike, you might as well just jump up to the full RR. Just you get a little bit extra suspension components, just a little bit nicer thing. But the quick shifter is a big deal because again, if you're buying a bike like this for that full superbike experience, being able to use the clutch to get out of or into first gear and then upshift and downshift clutchless allows for that lightning fast transition, and it really makes this bike very, very quick combined with that quick revving engine. So that's a real performance piece. Then you got the Kawasaki traction control. Again, only a 400cc bike, but a 4-cylinder with a lot of power. Having that traction control is good for not only poor weather, but also all kinds of conditions, maybe cold weather out on the roads. You've still got plenty of power to spin that rear wheel, so you can have that extra, and that traction control is adjustable for various ride or various modes. And same thing with your power level. You've got a high and low power level mode, so if you're driving in the rain or with cool tires, you just want to kind of tone the bike down, you can drop it to a low power mode as well. That gives you an option. And then there is smartphone connectivity. This is all part of the dash, which we're going to show you in a future video, but there's the Kawasaki Rideology app. This has full connectivity, so it allows you to have some your messages come through on your dash as well, but it also gives you better connectivity with the bike. You can do various things with the app. And the cool thing about that is anytime an app is connected to a bike, it has the potential to improve in time. So even the features that you have today, that might change, and you may have extra features added in the future, but you do have that on this. And that, and then you have ABS brakes, horizontal backlink suspension, which we talked about. Again, ABS are going to be standard on something like this. Some people say they don't want ABS for the track. I'm not telling you what to do, but there's usually a single fuse for the ABS, and that's an option for you as well. So it doesn't have switchable ABS, which I think is perfectly fine. Unless you're a super skilled rider, you should probably keep that ABS on, but that's maybe an option for you. So let's wrap up by talking about who this bike is for and who it's not for. And like I said off the top of the video, there's a lot of people reviewing this bike that just don't understand it. They say it's a 400, it's expensive for a 400, but let's talk about how that breaks down and who's buying this bike. This is a true super sport bike, and I've had people argue in the comments with me about that because they say you have to have a certain amount of power, but really what you're getting is the full experience. It really does matter that you can drive this on the road without going so far beyond legal limits that it becomes less fun to do. So you do have the full superbike experience at a lower power level. The suspension matters, all those things matter. What it is not is probably not an entry-level bike. Now that doesn't mean that an entry-level rider can't have this, but this is certainly probably more than an entry-level rider will appreciate. So something like the Ninja 400, the Ninja 650 are both going to give you good performance for an entry-level rider, and you'll probably not know how to get the benefit of this bike until you can ride a little bit better. So a couple things that go on. This is a bike that for me would be the super sport bike I would buy, even over the ZX-6. I've driven the ZX-6 in the past, and for me, that's a bike where to really have fun with it, I think I'd have to be at the track. I'm afraid I'd lose my license. Whereas with this one, I can really ring it out. And when you dream about riding a super bike, you're not dreaming about holding it low in the revs, driving it slowly in town. You're dreaming about revving it out, ringing it out, having some fun, and you can do that on this bike. Now, the elephant in the room, again, comes down to that 11,500 power output with the Canadian noise regulations. But again, there is a solution for that. Throw a pipe on that, do a quick tune on it. You can sort of bring it to where Kawasaki designed this bike to be. And a lot of superbike buyers are throwing a pipe on anyways and doing that tune as well. So you do have the option to unlock that full power on your own. And again, that switches that noise regulation issue from Kawasaki to you. And that's how we get these bikes here. So again, if you're thinking this is, we need more bikes like this, that's part of the reason we don't have more bikes like this. A 4-cylinder Screamer is just really not always welcome within certain regulations. So that's the catch. Now, if you understand this bike, if this bike is for you, this is a very rare bike. Like I said, I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. They only have one of these right now. If you want it, you should put your name on it in the winter. If you haven't been here in the winter, as far as I can see, there are motorcycles. They are completely stocked all winter long with motorcycles. They don't swap out with snowmobiles or something else. You can come walk through the showroom and see basically every kind of Kawasaki you would possibly want. I will be covering all the 2024s as they come in here, so you can stay tuned to this channel if you're not from New Brunswick, but if you are from New Brunswick, you need to stop by, and if you're interested in this bike, you need to put your name on it right away because it will sell out very, very, very quickly. So there's your review. If you have questions, let me know in the comments. I'll come back to this bike again and again as much as I can. If it's in stock, I'll come back and make sure I answer your questions, and we'll go through again and building that video database out. So thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.